Fact check false. Daniel Natal was not a member of groundbreaking Puerto Rican boy band Menudo in their 1979 to 1981 lineup. Fact check true. Daniel Natal's aesthetic is alarmingly close to that of the 40-year-old virgin. Fact check false. Daniel Natal was not, as TMZ recently reported, found on a missing children's website after having been abducted by a disgruntled theatrical agent 40 years before, subsequent to the cancellation of his syndicated family comedy. Fact check true. This is The Daniel Natal Show. As the empire strikes back against populism, it merits an examination of the methods by which the people in power keep us divided and conquered. For all its other obvious shortcomings and faults, the Operation Wall Street movement had certain oligarchical interests nervous after the 2008 financial collapse. They were not very keen on the public blaming them for the economic implosion and pressuring the government to rein in an out-of-control financial sector by imposing new regulations. So when youthful mobs took to the cities around the country, Wall Street responded by having the media change the subject. From a question about class, they wanted to deflect the conversation to being about race. That way, it would no longer be the 99% against the 1%, pitting we the people against the plutocrats. Rather, it would now be black versus white, men versus women, gay versus straight, Jew versus Gentile. See this chart here to understand just how synthetic the whole white privilege public relations rollout was, and why it was deployed. One enterprising researcher collected a whole series of charts showing how the media helped Wall Street in their racial arsonism by suddenly flooding the cultural sphere with terms like diversity and inclusion, or whiteness, or critical race theory, or unconscious bias. They pitted Black Lives Matter against the white working class and then sat back as the hostilities erupted. Aristotle describes these methodologies in his book Politics in Chapter 6, which he entitles, How a Tyranny is Maintained. Tyrants, he says, hate virtuous unified populations because they can rise up against them. He writes, "It is also advantageous for a tyranny that all those who are under it should be oppressed with poverty, that they may not be able to compose a guard, and that being employed in the procuring of their daily bread, they may have no leisure to conspire against their tyrants." Aside from afflicting us with poverty, Aristotle goes on about how important ethnic division is for a tyrant's grasp on power. According to one textbook on the subject, for Aristotle, democracy is only possible within homogeneous ethnic groups. While despots have always reigned over highly fragmented societies, a multi-ethnic society is thus necessarily anti-democratic and chaotic, for it lacks philia, this profound flesh and blood fraternity of citizens. Tyrants and despots divide and rule. They want the city divided by ethnic rivalries. The indispensable condition for ensuring a people's sovereignty accordingly resides in its unity. Ethnic chaos prevents all philia from developing. So what we watch the oligarchs do is shift the conversation after Occupy Wall Street from class to race. They got us to fight each other as they slip back into the shadows. It's against this backdrop that last week's anxieties related to hedge fund Melvin Capital and the Gamestop stock manipulation threw the financial class into a panic. Once again, it brought to the fore the tensions they were trying to cover over so many years ago, which had been provoked by Operation Wall Street protests. Regarding the most recent outcropping of this tension was when someone on Reddit allegedly discovered that a hedge fund named Melvin Capital was going to short stock on a dying video game retailer named GameStop. As a quick explanation, shorting a stock consists of borrowing stock you don't own from a broker and selling it immediately at its current price. Then you hope the stock value plummets so that you can buy it back at a lower price and return the shares you borrowed to the broker, but pocketing the difference. Basically, Melvin Capital borrowed stock at $10 a share, hoping to return it at $1 a share, keeping $9. They sunk in tons of money, hoping to make billions of dollars on this sketchy transaction. Here's the thing, though. For them to be able to make money, the value of the stock has to fall. This is where Redditors came in. They were sick and tired of the pump and dump schemes of the hedge funds, which hurt the average middle-class retail investor. So they started a campaign to buy the GameStop stock to thwart Melvin Capital. Remember, if the price of the stock goes up, they're on the hook for returning the stock to the broker, making up the difference at this increased value. To their horror, the price of the stock went way up to $100 a share. And since they borrowed the stock instead of buying the shares themselves, they're legally required to return it at a $90 per share loss. This would wipe out billions of dollars and bankrupt Melvin Capital. They put themselves in a very vulnerable position for a quick buck. If they had bought the stock instead, the worst that could happen is that they would lose their investment. But since they borrowed the stock to short it, the bottom of that pit is endless. Now here's where things get sketchy. Phone calls were made from the White House to brokerage firms to keep people from buying the GameStop stock to help Melvin Capital by locking out small-time retail investors. The entire system was frozen, with apps like Robinhood disallowing people from purchasing the GameStop shares. A bunch of other brokerages removed the stock entirely from their websites to lock out the little guy and to ensure that the hedge funds didn't go broke. This change of the rules mid-game was very reminiscent of the last election, where voting integrity statutes were altered illegally by local judges and county commissioners, bypassing the state legislatures, who, according to the Constitution, are the only ones who were allowed to change the rules. Nevertheless, ignoring the Constitution, they went ahead anyway with altered mail-in ballot procedures, ignored signature verification requirements, and erasing due date strictures. Speaking of changes in rules, 140% of GameStop stock was sold short. 140%. Imagine that. That's like many counties called for Joe Biden in Wisconsin or Michigan. 140%? How is the system so corrupt that people were selling more shares of stock than existed? That's what happened. And even with the unprecedented intervention of the powers that be, the stock closed at $325 a share. Melvin Capital's losses surpassed the $13.1 billion that the hedge fund was worth. The point here isn't GameStop, nor even Melvin Capital, but the penchant for the system to intervene and change the rules of the game when the powerful stood to lose money. One internet bystander commented, "Are the same people that get trading to stop in the middle of a trading day the same people that can get vote counting stopped in the middle of an election night?" The lesson Americans learned is that when the little guy is winning, the power elite change the rules mid-game. As Donald Trump Jr. commented, it took less than a day for big tech, big government, and corporate media to spring into action and begin colluding to protect their hedge fund buddies on Wall Street. This is what a rigged system looks like, folks. Of course, when class is the issue, the media right on cue tries to pivot and turn it into a racial issue, such as Newsweek, who wrote, "Meanwhile, far-right activists and conspiracy theorists on Telegram messaging service jumped on the chaos as validation of their ideologies, a potential recruiting event for disaffected users." Several tied the trading platform's actions to anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and blamed wealthy Jewish people for the decision. Or the Times of Israel, with their article, "The Jewish Angles to the GameStop Stock Saga Explained." There we read, "Epic trading war pitted hedge funds against individual investors, features Jewish billionaires on both sides of the struggle, sparks online anti-Semitism." Note the pattern? Every time it's about drawing attention to class, the media jumps in to make it about race, with the villain being the white working-class scapegoat they seem to be ginning up, a sort of all-purpose boogeyman responsible for everything from global warming to gravity anomalies in Canada to fallen arches, halitosis, and male-pattern baldness. The point is, don't get drawn into their age-old ethnic division tricks. Don't dignify their false premises, and don't play what, according to Aristotle, is a very, very old game. What the media is trying to distract you from is the secret that slipped out during the whole GameStop saga. Wall Street has likely been counterfeiting stocks. Something as illegal as counterfeiting money. This came out when charts showed that 140% of GameStop stock had been traded. This could only happen if there were fake stocks out in circulation. This only came out because small fry retail investors started buying the stock, and now there's a paper trail for it. This was never supposed to happen. GameStop is the tip of a very large iceberg. Hedge funds have been counterfeiting stock for decades and using this method to collapse companies and siphon trillions out of the financial system. I'll put a description below in the comments about an article on counterfeiting stocks. What's been going on with GameStop has been educating normies on a criminal enterprise that has a vastly larger footprint in the stock market and touches on thousands of companies you would never have suspected. And the financial vampires who've been feeding off the pension funds of working class people and institutional funds of government workers don't want you to know about it. So, cue race war. Could reading the New American Magazine boost your heart health, support your immune system, and help you lose 20 pounds of unsightly fat? The answer is no. But you should read it anyway. It'll keep you informed and provide information that cuts through the noise of lesser news outlets. thenewamerican.com. And don't forget to subscribe to us on social media and hit that like button.